All right, welcome everybody. It's Tony Zayas here, the SaaS Founder Show. We got a special episode, and it's special because typically we do these on Wednesdays, 11 o'clock. Andy, tell us what happened this time.
Yeah, technical difficulties, but we're talking to SaaS founders. I mean, if anybody can understand bugs and issues and having to take through that and being agile, I think it's these guys, right?
Yeah, for sure. So with that, I wanted to welcome today's guest. We got Martin Langele from Respondflow. Martin, thank you so much, and thank you for rescheduling, coming back today to talk with us. We're excited to talk to you. What I wanted to ask you, just to kind of kick things off, what I thought was really cool is that at your site for Respondflow, it says Respondflow is a home for rebels, PhDs, athletes, and troublemakers. Our mission is to redefine how businesses connect with customers. I want to hear about kind of that team of people and how the troublemakers fit in.
We'll be happy to. Yeah, no, kind of funny that you noticed that. It's kind of a little nod to our origin story in a sense. It's been named by a couple as like a typical start for like a Hollywood story. Like it was the weirdest group of co-founders that kind of came together. So me, myself, an immigrant from Norway, been in the US for about 5 years now. Kind of met up with the youngest professor in the University of Oklahoma, computer science history, that was studying his PhD in computer science for machine learning and sentiment analysis. And then we also pulled in our head of marketing, Matt Morf, who was the youngest Pilates instructor in the world. And then ultimately also our head of sales, Peter Daggett, that was a 3-time NCAA gymnast champion. So kind of a weird batch of people that you probably wouldn't ever have expected to be in the same kind of circuits, but ended up being great. Everybody has a lot of different viewpoints, and I think that's absolutely critical when you're starting a company.
That's pretty cool. How did that happen? How did all those folks come together? And you use the word origin story, which I love. So what is that origin story for you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, we've actually been working on a couple different startups, like not like together. All of us had been doing various different things, and we had this little group that we called Startup Beer at the university. Where we basically got a lot of like-minded people together, and then we would spitball and just drink beer and talk about our problems with our different side hustles and kind of software hacks. So it was pretty fun. I mean, we obviously got to be around each other, and it was easy to see who was like passionate about it and who was absolutely fanatical about it. I mean, everybody who showed up to this like startup beer group was obviously like very passionate about startups. But there was some that literally would rather not sleep and would rather sit there at the bar with the computer up and doing work, kind of working on their side hustles because they saw the big picture for it. And that's kind of the guys that I gravitated the most towards. I mean, that's who the co-founders ended up being. But the origin story of Respondflow was a little bit different. It was actually after I graduated. I'd kept in touch with everybody, of course, and we continued to meet up regularly. But at the time, I was heading up biz dev and sales for a medical device startup that was based in Oklahoma City. So I was leading a sales team there, and we were having great success with Facebook ads, and we were having kind of a surprising amount of interest from the potential patients that was really wanting to get into this prosthetic kind of innovative technology. But the problem we were running into was at the time that the patients had already scheduled a consultation, almost none of them showed up. I think we had a 7 to 9% conversion rate, which was absolutely awful. I mean, we thought these people were so validated because they had given not just their like, oh yeah, we want to get on a call. They had picked the time on their schedule. They had given their insurance cards. They had given their doctor's name and contact detail. So we stood to believe that it would be somebody who was interested. And when that wasn't the case, obviously I got frustrated. made me look like a fool because this was supposed to be the easy part. So I ended up just calling a couple of people that didn't end up picking up for the scheduled meeting because I was just like honestly kind of frustrated. And it turned out that the most common answer was they were afraid of robocallers. So that's why they didn't pick up. And it makes sense. Yeah. Too. So just got with the team, was like, okay, how about we just start sending a simple personal text message that says, hey, my name is Martin. I'm really excited to learn more about you and get you into a comfortable prosthetic socket. Looking forward to talking in 30 minutes. And by doing so, we suddenly saw 233% increase in conversion rate, which was insane. Wow, that was it. and it was. The only problem now was my entire sales team was spending their entire time while they were on the phone, because they had 4 of these calls every single hour. They were texting while they were on the phone. So they got the name wrong. They were like, hey, Tony. Well, they were talking to Tony, but they meant to text Andy. And it obviously ruined the entire personalization. So from my past experience, I've seen this being automated at a bigger scale for Expedia, Nike, Unilever, and Transamerica. So I've seen kind of how they optimize their customer success funnels by using IBM Watson and a lot of very top of the line, obviously $3 million a year license tools. But I was convinced that there should be something out there on the market to solve my pretty simple problem. Right. I just wanted to automate a text message from a local 10-digit phone number that could use a human delay, so it didn't just like send it right away, and that the customer could call back to and text back to. And I tried every tool on the market for about 4 months. Not a single thing could do those simple 3 things. And I was kind of shocked. I was like, this is ridiculous. I mean, how can every single competitor on the market have missed this simple step of just making it seem human? And that's kind of how the idea of Respondflow came together. And after that, it was kind of just a story of picking up the team players that we needed. I remember I was at the SAS lounge at the Newark airport on my way home for Christmas back in December of 2018, I believe. It was 30 minutes before my flight was leaving, at which point I wouldn't be able to call anybody in America for about 30 days, which, as you guys probably understand, if you're super fanatical about an idea, it might as well be 5 years. Right. So I was like, okay, well, I need to actually get somebody on my team, get this started so we can work over the holidays. And I had 30 minutes. So I called up Austin Graham, who's now our head of engineering and my co-founder, the smartest guy I know and the smartest guy I knew back then too. And I just kind of shared, like, this is the opportunity that I'm seeing. Like, this is not a problem that's unique to me. It's something that should have been existing for the last 10 years. And I'm absolutely shocked that it doesn't. Let's take this. Let's do this. And he was in. So that's kind of where it all started. And as we were growing, as we were meeting up for the Start of Beer thing, me and Austin started talking a lot about this Respondflow project. Suddenly Matt, which was one of the best marketers I knew at the time, he had been doing marketing for Amex and for Ferrari up in New York. And that was the guy that was the youngest Pilates instructor in the world. He was like, hey, so, I mean, is there any way I can like help out? Like if you want some help, you know, like if you want to build a website or anything, or maybe do some like small growth hacking. And I was like, why the hell not? Let's do it. So we got him on board. And then of course, as we continued, suddenly it was us 3 talking about the Respondflow project. And then Peter Daggett, the head of sales now, then reached out and was like, hey, I feel like I can sell anything, especially this. Let's do it. I mean, can I help out? And we brought him on too, and suddenly we got the 4 Musketeers kind of just like going. And we ended up getting a house together so that we could all do our full-time jobs while building this nights and weekends. Easier. So we
that
got,
was my next question is, did you go all in, or did you guys keep working and then do this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We tried to do the balance. We tried to do the whole bootstrapping thing for about a year and a half. It was a struggle. I was basically working as the piggy bank because I graduated 1 year before the other guys. So I had a full-time job at the time. So it was basically like whatever I could put to the side was like the Respondflow fund. And of course, I was doubling down on it. There was no doubt, but we were all intentionally like, oh, okay, maybe this will be a good little side hustle. Maybe we'll end up making a little bit of side income just passively, like all these dreams kind of start. And then we got involved in an accelerator and was suddenly seeing, okay, well, this isn't just a small idea. We could maybe grow this a little bigger. They were the first ones that challenged us to seek funding. And suddenly we got onto the idea that we needed 500,000 and needed to just double down and go full time on this. So I think it was 2 days or 2 weeks before the demo day. That was like the pitch event. We basically decided that. So we put that on the pitch deck, said, hey, we're looking for $500,000. This will get us here. At the end of that pitch event, I think one of our current lead investors came up to me right after the pitch and was like, hey, would 250,000 get you to Tulsa right now? It's like, maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah, right. So what was that like, that period? Let's call it the first year when you were still working, you're coming up with the product. Like, what was that like? When did you work on it? You know, was it hard to find the time? Did you run into a lot of challenges? What was that like early stage like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the earliest stage was probably when, we moved together before even the head of sales really came on. So we were, all of us basically just going door to door, finding the early users. I mean, that's kind of how scrappy we were. We spent no money because we had no money on marketing. And we, of course, first we built it as an MVP for just one use case, which was me running my sales team at my full-time job. But as soon as we got it out there and something was available, we realized, okay, we have a basic version that's less intensive than what we really need it to be, but we might as well just try selling it. So we saw a lot of traction with cannabis dispensaries, actually, where we got in front of them, got them to realize kind of the value prop behind it. Because when it comes to any sort of vice marketing, it's probably one of the most complex ones to really go into, because you can't do all that stuff that you usually use. So if you've seen success in a different industry and suddenly dispensaries are popping up in your state because they just legalized it, and you're like, I know I'm a great marketer, I can go into this, I can crush it, then suddenly you will find your kind of legs chopped off because you aren't allowed to do any of your usual marketing on Facebook, any of your usual marketing on Google. So there's really no way to get in front of people unless you directly contact them. And that's where we came in and could help with some customer engagement, and of course, keeping it extremely personal. Where it's like, hey, I saw that you bought this specific product. To stay true to the example, let's say a pre-roll or something. And it's like, hey, yeah, so if you are we just got in a brand new one, let me know if you want to drop by after work. I can keep it under the shelf for you. Want to make sure that it doesn't sell out on you, because I know you're going to love this, Andy. And by doing so, of course, increasing the sales for any campaign, because it's not just hey, 20% off.
That's really cool. I was knowing that you went into that marketplace, which, as you said, it's super challenging since you don't have a lot of typical ways to go to market available to you. That, while that sounds like a challenge for those, companies, I'm guessing there's things you probably learn from that once you're able to crack the nut, that you're able to take that elsewhere. How has that worked for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, that's probably how we got into just general franchises as well. Because suddenly we were seeing this traction with dispensaries, and we suddenly attracted multi-location dispensaries too, where they had a wish to make sure that headquarters could send out the messages, and they would go out from the local numbers, and each of the locations would have their own local number. So that way, if your store was in New Jersey and then my store was in Oklahoma, let's say, then we would both get a text from our local location for that franchise, but headquarters steers it. Any text or calls back, however, goes directly to that location. So that way, if there's any question about inventory, any question about whether or not you're open this late, then that goes directly to the location where there are already people ready to answer your questions. And that was a feature we didn't even think about until we really saw this in a difficult market that then kind of just like pulled us in, like forced us to make it more functional for them. And now that is extremely helpful for a lot of different industries as well. And it's kind of become our bread and butter in a sense.
Now, I'm always curious about the founder dynamic. You've got 4 founders, or is everybody a partner in the business?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how do you manage the differing opinions and the approach to road mapping the software and making decisions about pieces? Has that been easy for you guys, and why, or, is it a challenge?
I mean, it is definitely a challenge, and especially since everybody is so extremely unique, I would say.
Yeah.
We could say weird. I'm going to choose the word unique.
Weird. Good.
But when everybody is so different, it obviously becomes a friction point because we all have different viewpoints. But in a sense, it also becomes very balanced. It makes kind of the positions that we all have, people have respect for them because we know that whoever was in that position right now is the best at it. So if there is a question about marketing, I will give way to Matt. If he has a strong opinion about it, I will trust him on it. Same with sales. I will trust Peter on that. I'm not trying to interfere unless there's something that I'm like, just, oh, no, this is going to ruin our business, And of course, with engineering, I don't think Austin would even want my opinion on it. So it works out a lot because we have like those kind of experts in it. But of course, when it comes to decisions that just impacts us all, like, let me think of a couple of different ones. Like if we're hiring in a couple of positions, like should we hire this person that would help on sales, or should we hire this person that would help on engineering? Then that's of course decisions that we make together and need to balance on it. I'm not sure if we have a secret sauce to it, but so far, I mean, we've been living together and working together now full time since we got our pre-seed funding back in May.
Wow.
And even before then, we were working and living together as well. We just all had like we had our daytime jobs. I wouldn't call that like a break away from people, but we at least had times where we weren't just kind of glued together. And still, we didn't really have any conflict that caused a rift in any way so far. I mean, knock on wood, where anybody got so hurt that we couldn't work through it. But yeah, I would say like probably the best thing that we have is we aren't conflict shy. It's good to bring stuff up early and make sure that nobody takes it personal. Like we all have fun. We all started as friends. Like the main purpose of this company should be that we will be able to remain friends at the end of this as well.
That's awesome. Like the Beatles, there's no Yoko Ono yet that's come in and kind of like trying to take
Not yet.
No. And I think that's a unique story of you guys living together. I mean, we've done a lot of these interviews. We have a lot of clients in the software startup fit space. I don't hear that very often. So how do you turn it off? How do you guys manage that balance of like being so close 24/7?
I mean, you guys would probably relate to this. Is there ever a balance? I mean, it's like we have our hobby that we are privileged enough to do full time, which is great, and we all love it. We're probably a little worse than what we should be at turning it off, but it works because we're all just single young dudes who don't have families yet. And we can focus on this full time, almost to a toxic level, and it's not hurting anything in a sense. And of course, when it becomes a lot, we also break away. We also did a trip, and we have another one coming up where we kind of just took a weekend away, bought in some good beer, some good drinks, made some good food, and then we just relaxed. And then let just conversations, if it went into new ideas, new thoughts, that can come and go. But the main purpose of the trip was just to kind of get out of our day-to-day rhythm, get out of the house, get out of the office, and make sure that we could just kind of be around each other and hang out. And that's been super helpful. I think the last trip we didn't go anywhere like exotic. I think we went to this small town called Bartlesville, and we rented a very extravagant Airbnb for, I think, $30 a day. And then we could just kind of relax there, because it was more about just being around each other than going to like a destination. And I think that's probably what we're going to try and do again. Maybe not Bartlesville, but somewhere similar. It's kind of small, and we can just relax, go see the town in like 10 minutes. And just other than that, just relax.
Kind of like a little band, you know, going off to make some music or an album, and it's all fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great comparison. I'll take it. Well, I was thinking a reality show. You guys need to consider that. Get the camera going in the house.
Right. It's like the real world.
No, we should not. I don't think we should tape anything that we joke about. It's we are far too comfortable with each other.
I'm kind of curious about the whole pitch thing. You know, I find this interesting. I've been in those scenarios, and I think we talked about it a couple episodes ago, but you know, what was your experience having to pitch the business? You know, what kind of, are there any like tips that have come out of it to say, this is what we learned to do right, or what we learned that didn't work? What was pitching like in that process for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's also got to be prefaced with the fact that like I came to America to study entrepreneurship. So like throughout college, I was basically forced to pitch a bunch of startups. And together with the co-founders, we've had, I think we calculated it, up to 28 failures, which is like projects that we tried and we completely face planted on. So like with that in mind, obviously we had some experience with this. I had previously also been a part of raising $4 million for a different startup. So I'd seen it before. But I would say like the big thing that I saw that I noticed that was different from a lot of the other startups was a lot were lacking numbers. And not because the idea wasn't like stand out or stellar, but there was no numbers on this is like what we're looking at. This is our revenue. This is what we can expect as a margin as we grow. This is a financial projection. And I think that's one of the areas that most people don't really want to stress with. Because I mean, it makes sense. Like if you have a great idea, you have a great team, and you can put together kind of the product, then you also think, oh yeah, I can just like hire on an accountant and stuff like that. But as a founder, and I mean, you can probably relate more than a lot of people. If you don't know your numbers, it's hard for any investor to really believe that they can ever get any money back. You kind of have to show them the path. And for a startup, depending on what you're going into, now there are a lot of ways to get money without having to work with a venture capital firm, where you can do stuff that's a little bit more founder friendly in a sense, where there's not like boom or bust, where they invest in a bunch of companies and expect that maybe like 2 or 3 really boom, and then the rest can just like kind of lose it all. There are ways to now get money where you can get it through crowdfunding. You can get it through like partners that you're working with, like with Stripe now coming out with their Stripe fund, where they can get money based on your recurring revenue. Like at that point, you don't have to stress about really growing that much, and that might be a better path. For us, we're looking to really go international. We're looking to grow as fast as possible. I've identified that this is obviously a big opportunity now, but as far as protecting that, the best thing we can do is grow as fast as possible. And that's why we intentionally made the decision to partner up with venture capital firms that can really help us with growth, can help us with capital, can help us with the resources that we need. But yeah, as far as, I guess, raising money, I would say for pitching, like going into it, definitely decide whether or not that is what you want to do.
Right.
Yeah. If that's what you want, then you have to prove, hey, this is how we're going to reach our 10x value in the next year, so that when we raise at a 10x value higher than what you invested in. Because that's then more important than this is how we're going to make a profit. Yeah. Because that's relatively irrelevant for a lot of venture capital firms.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the amount of time that it takes to pitch and raise money. You know, there's a lot of things you have to do that you don't want to. And then, you know, like a number of our clients, being beholden to investors can always be a challenge too. So you got to really think about, is that what you want of your life and your startup?
Right. Yeah. Cause it's tricky. I mean, like like if I were to look at it from like, what is the most comfortable, at this stage in my life, I love the fact that I can be just fanatically living for this. I can still just be like a single dude, just like going way too hard on it. But is that the life stage that I'm going to see myself in over the next like 10, 20 years? Absolutely not. Would I do this again then? Probably not. So it really just depends also what you can maintain, because as soon as you take on investors, that is your life for the next 5 to 10 years. And you're kind of married to it. So you kind of have to just strap in and be okay with the stress. Because if not, you're really going to hate your life. And it's probably not the most glamorous thing to say, but it's true.
So obviously you had some success, with the whole pitch process. How did you get to that point to discover, you said you heard others that were pitching weren't getting the detail and numbers. I'm guessing that was an advantage you had because you observed that and used that. But what were the big takeaways aside from that, and how you became successful with the process?
Yeah, I mean, a big one for that is finding good partners, finding good mentors. I say that like I did it, but really it was a full team behind me, right? Like the biggest benefit that we saw was partnering up with that accelerator that was local in Oklahoma City, called the Thunder Launchpad. Mm-hmm. So Stitch Crew, which is the people that put it together, Erica, Chris, Gabby, they are some of the most knowledgeable people within startups in the Midwest. They have backgrounds from starting and selling various different startups. And Erica has also experienced working in VC in Silicon Valley. So she brought all that back, and they started this accelerator where they didn't take any equity. So they're not taking anything back. All they want is to promote startups in the Midwest, because there was no real culture for it. And finding people like that, really hard. But finding accelerators that do take some, that's a lot easier. And I would say if you feel like you need that guidance, it's totally worth the cost. We were extremely lucky that we didn't, like the accelerator that we partnered up with didn't take any ownership or any equity, and was just like really willing to help. Because pitching them, getting that harsh feedback from somebody that you trust and somebody that have done this before, that got us all the way there, really. I think I pitched them probably 35 times before I actually pitched any real investor. And every single time they said, oh yeah, I would never invest. That right there that you said right here, complete idiotic. Never say that again. And that was exactly the feedback you need as a startup founder. You can't take like sugar-coated information back and hope that that's going to help you, because if you get that no, or if you scorn that investor, you're probably not going to get that chance again, because there's a lot of relational work that goes behind really just getting investments, more so than just the idea or even showing the financials. But all of it kind of builds upon this story together. But yeah, I would say like any actionable advice I would give is probably find somebody who's done it before. Usually people who's done it before are more than willing to help. Me included. I would love to help anybody who has any questions. Usually I jump on calls as well and try and help out, give honest feedback on pitches, because I know how it is. It took us 6 months before we closed funding. And I could have sworn back in November when we were like pitching that, we're going to get this closed by January. And then suddenly it was in May, So it's good to obviously be optimistic. That's my motto. I probably am one of the most disgustingly optimistic people on the planet. But it still is good to be realistic with the timelines, because otherwise you're just going to burn out your team if you promise them that we're all going to be full-time in 2 months and suddenly it takes 6. So, yeah. But yeah.
How do you balance? Go ahead, Tony.
No, I was going to ask about, just on that point, amongst the 4 of you, what is that? Do you have a couple of like super optimistic, and then the others that are, just to balance? Because I think that's a good point, is that I think there's something to be said about the wherewithal to maintain that optimism, but then at the same time, you got to have someone to kind of balance that out with realistic expectations for the rest of the team and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I would say we totally do. I mean, like I wouldn't say anybody's pessimistic, but of course, as far as, I mean, and it is my job too, as the CEO, to be extreme hype man, like be the one that's like, yes, we're on the right track. We got this. Because if not, who else is going to be? And for the rest of the team, I would say like, it's a great balance that they can be asking me those hard questions. Like if I'm saying, this is the market we need to go for, this is the budget we're going to do, let's go, let's do this. Having a couple people there that says, hey, Martin, I think that's absolutely idiotic. Like, let's maybe take a breather here. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page. I have no problem talking about it and going through it. But in the way that I present stuff, that might be hard to like challenge. So getting that from the team that knows me is invaluable. I think otherwise, like getting people to just like blindly follow you is not a benefit for any company. At that point, everybody's wrong at least half, if not more of the time. So when it comes to just kind of steering a company, I don't know how it would go if it wasn't for the balance of people who say, hey, Martin, let's take a breather here. So
I'm wondering, you talked about the kind of mentorship, the folks at the accelerator, investors, your own partners, family and friends. I'm kind of interested in the aspect of people probably always have advice, and you've got different people with different levels of experience, but I'm sure you're not needing for more advice from different parties. So how do you manage all that? How do you take that in, especially for a startup founder? Because I know a lot of folks where they pitch their idea to their friends and family and all they get is a bunch of ideas. And, then you take it to an accelerator and some of those folks can be good and some of them can be mediocre. And so I'm just kind of curious personally, how do you handle all the, I guess, input that you end up getting?
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question, actually, and something that we actually talked about as a company recently, so extremely relevant. Yeah. We have a lot of great advisors for Respondflow, and obviously that's something that I'm extremely grateful for. But of course, I think it's important to acknowledge like what is the background for everybody. Like to give some like specific examples. For Respondflow, we have one of our advisors is an incredible marketer. He's been leading the marketing kind of paid pay-per-click marketing for like some of the biggest companies in the world within media, and has been doing the marketing push for like 21st Century Fox, for Sony Pictures, and leading their $1 million budgets. So obviously, when I have a question about marketing and paid ads, that is where I would go. Like, there's no question about it. But when it comes to just like overarching questions about other areas, like unless it's a general question that I would have asked everybody, because every one of our advisors have a very long list of achievements and backgrounds and industries that they've been exposed to. Like I probably would have like guarded myself from asking certain advisors certain things. Like for other instances, like we have our head of talent and culture, Tracy. She is incredible. And whenever I have a hard conversation that I need to have with a team member, there is nobody I would ask except for her. Because I know that when it comes to empathy and when it comes to somebody who knows exactly how to really manage emotion and stuff that can arise after having a really serious conversation with a team member, there's not a single person that I would have asked or trusted more. So I would say like having a large bench of advisors can be a good thing. It can definitely be a problem if you have advisors who are more general in a sense. But having like specialist advisors for special problems, I think is a superpower. I mean, at that point, you can pull from some of the smartest people on the planet, and they are also there for you, and they want to help out. And yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know where I would be if I didn't have the advisors that I have today, and the mentors. So.
What about the other side, the feedback from customers? I mean, one of the things that we talk a lot about with SaaS founders is you have a product and customers start using it and they have new ideas, they have feature requests. How do you balance that for you guys and your roadmap? Because as an example, Basecamp was famously didn't take a lot of feedback and they wanted to keep it simple. Where do you guys stand with how customers engage with you?
Yeah, I mean, that is something we actually struggle a lot with, because it is like our product is, of course, it's a tool, not a solution. Like, you can use it for a lot of different things. That's why we call ourselves the MailChimp of SMS. We're not like only for let's say pediatricians or only for shoe salesmen. Like, we are for all and anybody who would want to communicate with their customers over text. So like, how we find that balance is really hard. Unless we find an industry or a customer that is kind of pulling us too hard in one direction, where we are seeing this being extremely valuable for a lot of different customers, then we definitely guard ourselves for prioritizing like integrations and other stuff into that space, because we don't want to end up with a product that is okay for everybody, but absolute mediocre for everybody as well. So it's it's a difficult one. We haven't actually solved it. Would actually love to hear your feedback. What do you usually advise people for?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. We've developed a process with a lot of our clients and even our own products where I like to logically evaluate things. So you take something in, and obviously you're measuring what's the value and outcome, what's the cost and time, what's the we always talk about stickiness of features, and so it's a challenging process. I like to break everything up into as logical of a process as possible, to try and pull emotion out of it, to try and pull bias out of it, because that's the one thing I find in this is it's easy to have bias, and it's easy to, assume the answer and you don't. And so the more you can get real feedback, you can turn it into an equation, I think is the better.
Yeah, that's solid. I mean, it's the art of the customer interview, right? I mean, it's so hard to nail down. And usually, the typical example of if you ask people if they wanted what they wanted back in the 1800s, say faster horses, right? I mean, it's so when it comes to everything around asking customers for feature feedback, we definitely steer clear of that. But we also have to listen to what is it the customers are asking for in the sense of functionality. And of course, since we're a young company right now, most of the stuff that we get is they just want tweaks to the current features, not necessarily full feature sets, but collecting all that, getting it organized. We use something called Product Board. That's been pretty good for us. So really love that. But I feel like it's hard to make a product completely democratic, asking customers what they want. That's cool. Getting votes for it, that's almost probably the best thing I've seen. Yeah. But even still, it ends up kind of falling short. There's a good example with an accounting tool called Fiken. It's a very Norwegian accounting tool for small businesses. And they do that. They have a open Trello board where they have a full product roadmap that is completely open. And then they let people add to the first step of the process. So people can add new features as an idea, and then people vote on it. And then the highest ranked ones goes to the top, and then they move it over to in progress. And I think that's probably the most open engineering kind of approach I've ever seen, which I'm not sure how well it's working, but it's at least something.
Yeah, I like that approach. I think there's a software called User Voice that helps control that. So I always like the voting methodology, but then you still have to take it and evaluate it. Even if it gets 100 votes, it doesn't mean it fits into the vision of the product. So
right. I mean, that's a balance though, figuring out exactly what you prioritize. I mean, for us, it's also I can see what we can do is innovative here in America, but local number text message marketing that's like from a very human approach, like letting them text and call back, letting them actually communicate and just sparking that conversation. That is something I believe would be revolutionary worldwide, where even text message marketing hasn't really gone past the 5-digit point. And that's where I see us really being revolutionary. But how do you find that balance where you make that, okay, focus on causing a revolution, right? That can really drive you to make some big feature steps. But is that what our current customers need? And how do you balance that? It's definitely a hard problem.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Martin, in the text messaging marketing space, it's got to be super crowded. And you said you noticed some things, about simplicity, personalization that weren't, like, no one was offering that. So you guys identified that. You guys are doing that. How do you maintain that, like, first mover advantage as far as offering certain things and, like, take advantage of that?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest thing that we're doing is making sure that we're only working with companies that want to talk to their customers, because that is what we do. We want to, we spark conversations. We're not just a notification service. And that way we make sure that the use cases also promote engagement, making sure that our customers are being educated to kind of send conversations back and forth instead of just sending messages. And I mean, a good use case we had was a customer that we have that sends a weekly deal on Fridays, and they call it Friday text. And instead of just sending that out, they actually send on Thursday nights, hey, Tony, do you want to get the Friday text? And that way people then text back and they get that engagement. And it's like, yeah, I kind of want to see what do you got, And it causes that engagement. People talk about it in the store. It becomes more of like, hey, Martin, I saw you texted me on Thursday. Yeah, no, that was an awesome deal. And of course it sparks that kind of conversation back and forth, and also educates the customer, the end customer, that they can text and call that number to actually reach somebody in the store. And that's probably the biggest educational barrier, because like you said, it is a noisy space in America, and it has been for a couple of years. But right now it's really starting to ramp up. But most customers aren't really educated in the fact that they can text back, because there's so few solutions that actually let them. And if we make that the norm, then at least from what I'm seeing, most of the customers would be frustrated that they can't text their business, which is where we come in.
I love that conversational Thursday evening message. That's very cool.
No, thank you.
Do you ever think about, larger competitors take a MailChimp that can come in and, maybe attack the market faster and already have, I actually just read an article today about how Slack didn't want to get purchased. And, then Microsoft comes in, and Microsoft has so much money, so many customers behind them, that they finally, they kind of needed to go to Salesforce to really compete. And so I'm curious, do you ever worry about incumbents in the marketplace?
Oh, of course. I think if you have a business where you feel like you have any sort of competitive edge, and you aren't focusing on getting that branding out there so that you are really solidifying yourself, then I mean, in that case, in my eyes at least, you're ignorant, because if you really have something that great, people are going to try and copy you.
Right.
Of course, that's a concern. I would say the one thing that makes me sleep much better at night is the fact that we already have that team. I mean, with Austin's background in machine learning and sentiment analysis specifically, not only can we be the tool that lets people have conversations, but we're also the only tool on the market that can actually tell you whether or not those conversations were positive or negative. And giving that insight is something that is a complete competitive edge. And continuing, of course, to innovate on that, to build on that, ultimately being able to allow the customer, as they're writing the text, to get instant feedback on whether or not that text looks like spam. Hey, not only just because of the phone providers, but because of you sending 4 similar emojis of an angry face, this does not look good. Remove some of those emojis. So your deliverability is going to be better, and people are going to receive it a lot better. And being able to use that basically by having all the people that's communicated on our platform and then having the algorithm learning from it, letting them then see what takeaway we get. I mean, that will just continue to be an increasing competitive advantage. I think so far we've had about 3.7 million conversations on Respondflow. So every single one that gets sent, we can learn from, we can improve the platform, and of course, build those moats. That's absolutely critical. But yeah.
It's really cool. So what do you see as the biggest challenge that you've faced building a startup? What's been the, scariest thing or the biggest challenge you've faced so far?
Oof. I mean, that's a really hard question. I mean, from a technical sense, there's definitely been like barriers that we've hit. But I think more than anything, it's just motivation. I mean, it's always like you're basically running up against like the waves the entire way, and keeping that motivation and keeping the team cohesive and pushing in the same direction and always being optimistic about what's next, that is extremely challenging. Because of course, suddenly you have a season where you hit like big waves for like a full month, like in a row, and everybody's like a little passive on this. I'm not sure if I want to really push on this or double down on this. And then getting the team kind of out of that like mental state, that's challenging. I would say probably the biggest challenge, and I think that will only continue. And I mean, the good thing there is I've seen it in the past as well. I've seen what happens when a company doesn't overcome it, which is what inspires me to continuously just pushing that positive energy out, and at least trying to be a force for good. But yeah, it's hard. I feel it's important to surround yourself with other founders, other people in the same position as you that's can like really relate. It's probably gotten me through more dark days, if I can call them that, than anything else.
Andy, you're not hearing you.
Yeah, Andy, I couldn't hear it.
I have dogs, so I muted myself for a second. Well, no, I mean, you could call them dark days. I was saying, because I think everybody that owns a business knows there are ups and downs. There are good days and bad days, good months and bad months, and that's just kind of par for course. I always see, entrepreneurship as perseverance. It's really about, no matter whether it's good or bad, you got to keep moving through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the things that I would identify as well is probably the biggest thing that would be a factor of whether or not you're going to be a successful founder or not, is just resilience. Like if you're not resilient, you just shouldn't, because you're going to hate your life. And then you're going to feel like a failure, even though you probably achieved more than most people have achieved throughout their entire career. It still is like, yeah, you felt like you failed. And if that really hits you, it's probably not the sport for you.
I'm kind of curious. Do you think that the startup world and being a founder is a personality thing, and that, there's a certain type of person it's right for and they can thrive in, and there's other people that it just will never be possible? Or is it kind of like growth mindset that anybody can do it? It just, they may have to, learn to use different muscles, if you will.
I like to think that everybody can do literally anything. Like if you really, really want to, of course, some people are more prone to it. Maybe they already have that natural skill set. But I mean, I would have never thought, like I am also a strong believer that I will never, ever become a surgeon, right? But I mean, if you spend enough time on it, you totally can. I guess the question more, at least in my head, is that a life you're going to enjoy? Because if you're not learning to, or if you don't feel like you have that like passion for creating something new, or if that passion isn't enough for you to really keep pushing, then it's going to be hard for you, at least for a couple of years. And I mean, is that really something that anybody would want to do?
Right.
I know I don't want to put myself through med school. Awful to me. But then again, complete respect for whoever does it. And I probably could if I really forced myself to do it. But yeah.
Tony?
So what would you say, what does the path forward look like for Respondflow at this point?
Yeah. So right now, so right now, of course, like we're like still in pre-seed stage. We're still testing. We're still experimenting. We're still working with a lot of different industries, finding new use cases, seeing what works for us. So we're probably going to continue to test around that, continuing to develop the platform. I mean, we just launched our second, like the newest version of our platform back in July of 2020. So far, the platform is still extremely young. So there's so much that we want to do to it before we really feel like we can go international, go big. But I mean, so far, we're seeing a lot of growth. We're loving where we're at. I mean, our team went from just the 4 co-founders back in May to now, if we count consultants and the interns as well, to like 21 already. So it's been, and that's with like 13 full-time employees as well. So continuing to see that growth and building up with great people. I mean, it's too fun to just stop. So we're going to continue to do that. And of course, ultimately going to start doing some international market testing with some of the current kind of identified customers that has already shown some interest. And hopefully within the next 10 years, like our BHAG, if you may, is being available to every business worldwide within the next 10 years.
Very cool. Going back to the point on, optimism and even like passion, as you have this growing team, how do you articulate that vision? This is a point that Andy actually has a white paper on that's called the Vision Gap. How do you articulate that, your vision, so that your team can really understand it, buy in, and then obviously you're probably finding people, you want to find people that are passionate and enjoy what they're doing. Doesn't feel like work, but how do you do that? So how do you articulate the vision, and how do you get the buy-in and keep that momentum moving forward?
Yeah, so I should probably read that white paper for sure, because I don't have a formula for it. But I personally like to make sure that I have a call with every single person that we are planning on hiring, where we talk about that. And one of the things that I identify as one of the key things that I'm looking for in any position, whether or not that's customer success, whether or not that's an engineer, whether or not that's sales, that needs to be that they have some inkling of entrepreneurship in them. The best thing I can ever be told in an interview is, hey, Martin, I think this looks like a cool opportunity, but just so you know, I probably won't be here in 2 years because I'm going to start my own thing. Like that right there is, you're hired on the spot. That is incredible. That means you have that drive. That means you love what you're doing and will love what you're doing, because everything you learn for working in a startup, wearing several different hats, that you're going to bring on to the next bigger thing, which is passion that you can't buy. You can't get that anywhere. And that's probably one of the key things that I'm looking for. And then of course, when I talk to them, I don't tell them about like, hey, Respondflow is this text marketing software in Tulsa, Oklahoma that is looking to grow, and right now you would be the 14th employee. No, this would be like, hey, if you want to come on this is going to be incredible. We're obviously going to go international. These are the companies that we've already identified in, of course, Norway, as well as England and the rest of Europe. And that is what's next. So the question for them then is, of course, like, is that something you want to be a part of? And then more than anything, we make sure that every one of our employees are taken care of. I think one of the things that I took away the most from just growing up in Norway was kind of the work-life balance there. Obviously, I'm a horrible example of that. But for kind of like any everyday just like job that you would take, that there's at least like 8 weeks paid time off, which is why we do unlimited PTO. That if you get hurt, you don't ever have to worry about it. Healthcare is taken care of. That's why we cover 100% of your premium for health, vision, dental, and life insurance. And then ultimately, one of my big goals, which is something that I have yet to see in America, is something called like a corporate cabin. So at every Christmas party, at least back home, I knew that my dad had, like, at his office, they had a corporate cabin. So I always knew that we had this cabin up in the woods. I thought we owned it. We definitely didn't growing up. And during the Christmas party, they would just pull out the names. So they pulled out my dad's name and was like, hey, now you need to take the full week off. Bring your kids, bring whatever to this beautiful mountain cabin with like 16 bedrooms, like huge jacuzzi, like all the stuff that you would like have in a dream house that you could imagine that your dream cabin would be if you were the CEO. And that's something absolutely everybody got access to. And that's something that I hope that one day we will have enough revenue to really get as well for the team here.
That's very cool. Yeah, I'm such a big believer in vision, I think, and articulating it, because you want your entire team, headed in a common direction. And the corporate cabin, it's funny that you say that, and Tony knows this, is on our vision board that we have is a vacation home for the team. And I haven't done it yet, but that's something that I've talked about for years. That's fun.
That is so cool. Yeah, no, I love that. Please do. I mean, that's something that is so, thinking back growing up, that was one of the biggest things. Like, I always knew that we had that cabin at Hofjell, which is like what the mountain was called. And it was like ski in, ski out. And I was like, oh my God, we're living like the high life. It was like, no, absolutely not. This was like what everyone at the company got. And it was just incredible. I mean, it's something that, like, for work-life balance, like kind of promoting that, even though our team is extremely young, I don't think there's a single one in our company that has a child yet. But still, like, that time will come. And I want to make sure that we are there to make sure that that's, of course, taken care of, and that everybody can build those kind of memories.
Very cool.
Fantastic. Well, we're just about at the end of the hour here. So again, Martin, this has been a fascinating conversation. We've really enjoyed it, and appreciate you, jumping on here and sharing all about Respondflow and yourself and your journey. And just encourage everybody who's tuning in to go check out respondflow.com. Take a look. You're doing some really cool things, Martin, just all around. And we will definitely stay in touch with you and look forward to seeing big things happen for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. And thank you so much, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Martin. Everybody have a good day.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.